He said he wanted an open marriage. Just like that. No fight, no lead up. One moment we were talking about packing for my grandmother's 80th birthday trip, and the next, he was telling me he'd met a woman online, a woman who called herself his dom. I didn't even react right away. I just froze mid-sentence with my coffee still in my hand. He said it so casually, like we were discussing a grocery list. There wasn't anger in his voice, only calm certainty. That's what made it worse. I'd been with this man for almost 9 years. We have a 5-year-old daughter, we share a home, bills, plans, and now, apparently, his online mistress. He said, "You told me your grandparents stayed together after your grandfather cheated. Maybe we could do something like that. Just more honest." Honest. That word hit me harder than the rest. Looking back, the signs were all there. He'd been different for weeks, maybe months. Late nights on his phone, laughter from the other room, that little flick of his thumb locking the screen when I walked in. He told me he was reading about investments or talking with a gaming buddy. I wanted to believe him because the alternative meant admitting that something between us had already died. But that night, the night before we were supposed to fly, I couldn't pretend anymore. He sat on the edge of the couch, elbows on his knees, staring at the floor. I asked, "What's wrong?" He didn't answer at first. So I laughed, trying to cut the tension. "You look like you're about to break up with me." He didn't laugh back. Instead, he asked me to sit down. And then came that sentence, the one that cracked my whole world in half. "I want an open marriage." He said it quietly, like a confession, but there was no remorse behind it, just finality. He told me he'd met someone on Discord a month earlier. Her name was Isabel. She was helping him explore things. That's what he called it. Exploring things. He said she was his dom and he was her sub. That it wasn't cheating, it was self-discovery. That she understood him in ways I didn't. I remember staring at him, thinking, "You're really doing this. You're actually saying this out loud." When I asked if he'd slept with her, he said no. But somehow that didn't make it better, because I'd already seen the look in his eyes, that flicker of obsession that told me he was somewhere else entirely. He said if I didn't want this, we could separate. No begging, no guilt, just a statement. I think that's when the numbness began. After he went to bed, I sat in the kitchen for a long time. The clock ticked louder than usual. I could hear the fridge hum. Every sound in that house felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else's life. And then I saw his laptop on the counter, still open, still logged in. I don't even remember deciding to do it. I just started scrolling. The chat history went on for pages. They'd been talking every day. Morning messages, night messages, inside jokes, voice notes. And then, the gifts. He'd sent her $300 just because. Then he told her he wanted to buy her a phone. Not just any phone, the newest iPhone. "I want you to think of me every time you use it," he'd written. And she had replied, "You're such a good boy. You make your dom proud." I felt my stomach twist. I kept scrolling. He'd sent money to other women too. Small payments, random usernames, flirty notes. "For your time. You deserve something nice. Thank you for listening." It was like discovering he'd built a secret world, and everyone in it knew him better than I did. He came into the kitchen around midnight, saw me at his laptop, and didn't even flinch. He just sighed and said, "You weren't supposed to find that yet." Yet. I asked him how long it had been going on. He said, "A few months." I asked him if he loved her. He said, "I care about her." I asked if he cared about me. He said, "Of course I do, but it's different." Then he said something I'll never forget. "I feel deep in my soul that I'm meant to pursue her. It's an unwavering feeling that keeps coming back. I'm fully prepared to take that risk, that I might lose something to gain something better." Gain something better? Like I was the practice run for his happiness? I wanted to scream, but all that came out was a whisper. "Get out." He said, "You don't mean that." I said it again, louder. "Get out." But he didn't, not that night. He went to bed, and I sat there, staring at the dark window, realizing I didn't even know the man sleeping in my house. The next morning, I woke up before him, made coffee, packed my bag, folded my daughter's clothes, all the while pretending I wasn't breaking apart inside. When he finally came into the kitchen, I told him, "I need you gone by the time I get back." He didn't argue, he didn't apologize, he just nodded. And for some reason, that hurt more than anything else, because that was the moment I knew he'd already let me go. During the flight to my grandmother's, my daughter slept against my arm. I looked out the window, watching the clouds drift by, and wondered how I was supposed to explain this someday. How do you tell your child that her father traded love for control? When we landed, my phone was full of unread messages from him, but none of them said, "I'm sorry." They said things like, "We'll talk later," or "This is what I need." Every word felt like another door slamming shut. At my grandmother's house, I smiled through the celebration. Everyone thought I was exhausted from work. I told them I was fine. But at night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat on the porch and let the silence swallow me. The stars looked so still, like they were mocking me. And in that stillness, I realized something. He hadn't been searching for freedom. He'd been searching for permission. Permission to hurt me without feeling like the villain. He texted me a few times that week, short, cold messages. When I asked if he'd ended things with her, he replied, "That's my private life." Private life? As if marriage were a public hobby. I told him, "You can't call it private when you destroyed what was shared." He didn't answer. I deleted the chat. Every night, I replayed that moment at the table. How calm he was, how deliberate. He hadn't stumbled over his words. He'd been waiting for the right time to say them. And that's what haunts me most. Not the betrayal itself, but the preparation behind it. He'd been planning his confession like someone rehearsing a performance, testing the lighting, choosing the lines, picking the day before our flight because he knew I wouldn't explode in front of our daughter. He knew me too well. By the end of the week, I stopped checking my phone, stopped waiting for remorse that would never come. I started focusing on school again, on the future, on anything that wasn't him. But the thought still lingers. How many nights was he sitting in the same room as me, sending her messages? How many times did he look at me and feel nothing but guilt dressed up as bravery? When I flew home, the house felt hollow. His side of the closet was empty. The bed looked whiter. The air itself felt different, still, almost sterile. On the kitchen table was a folded note, his handwriting. "I hope someday you understand." Understand what? That he mistook selfishness for honesty? That he broke our family because a stranger called him master's pet online? I stood there for a long time, holding that note, until the paper started to crumple in my hand, and then I laughed, a bitter, exhausted laugh, because there was nothing left to cry for. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling. The room felt too quiet. My daughter's soft breathing down the hall was the only sound grounding me. I realized then, love doesn't end with betrayal. It ends with indifference. And he'd reached that point long before he ever said the words open marriage. He didn't want an open marriage. He wanted an open exit, a way to leave without having to say he'd stopped loving me. So when people ask me what happened, I just say he said he wanted an open marriage, because that's easier than explaining the rest. He said he wanted honesty. What he really wanted was forgiveness without confession. And when he didn't get it, he called it freedom. When I came back home, the house felt unfamiliar, too clean, too quiet, like someone had wiped away the evidence that we'd ever lived there. His clothes were gone, but not everything. A few books on the nightstand, a coffee mug with a crack down the handle, a stack of unopened mail near the door. And on the couch, his old hoodie, the one I used to sleep in when he worked night shifts. I sat down, pulled it close, and for a second, I almost cried. Not because I missed him, but because that smell, laundry detergent and a hint of his cologne, made it feel like none of this had really happened. But it had. And what I didn't know yet, standing in that hollow living room, was that the truth was going to hurt worse than the betrayal I'd already seen. The next few days were chaos. Bills to sort, calls from school, work emails piling up. Life doesn't stop for heartbreak, it just expects you to keep moving while you bleed. One night, I was cleaning out drawers when I found his old phone, the one he'd replaced a few months earlier, saying it barely worked anymore. It was dead, covered in dust, the charging port clogged with lint. I plugged it in anyway. At first, the screen stayed black. Then it flickered to life. Slow, hesitant, like an old wound reopening. No lock screen, no password. He'd wiped some apps, but not everything. There were texts, photos, emails, and what I found inside made the Discord affair look like a footnote. The messages went back years, names I didn't recognize, different women, different cities, same tone. You're special. No one understands me like you do. I wish my wife was more like you. Each thread ended the same way. Money transfers, sudden silence, a new number. He'd been doing this long before Isabel, before the open marriage, before this self-discovery. He'd been living a double life, craving attention, validation, submission, like an addict who'd found a moral loophole. And I realized the open marriage wasn't a sudden decision, it was a strategy, a way to legitimize what he'd already been doing for years. I scrolled until my fingers shook. There were photos of him shirtless in hotel rooms, screenshots of money he'd sent, even one message that said she doesn't suspect anything. That was me. 9 years, and he'd turned our marriage into background noise. I found one contact saved only as L. Her messages were the longest. It wasn't about domination or money. It was emotional. They talked about dreams, regrets, plans. She called him her second chance. He called her his real connection. The last message from her was dated 8 months before Isabel. "You promised you'd leave her." He replied, "I will, just not yet." My vision blurred. I felt dizzy. That was the moment I realized he'd probably used the same line on every one of them. The next morning, I called him. He didn't answer, so I texted, "I found your old phone." It took him 2 hours to reply. "That's private." That word again, private. I wrote, "How many of them were there?" No answer. Then finally, "You don't need to dig through the past. I told you the truth." The truth, but the truth had layers, and he'd only given me the top one, polished and rehearsed. For the next few days, I couldn't stop replaying everything. The random absences, the work trips, the sudden mood swings, it all fit now. Every lie was just a missing puzzle piece falling into place. I remembered the Christmas he said he was too tired to visit my family, how he'd stayed home to catch up on rest. That night, his old phone showed a video call with L, timestamped right when my parents and I sat down for dinner. I remembered the weekend he said he was volunteering for an event at work. He'd been in a hotel with someone named Ava. There's a certain kind of heartbreak that goes beyond anger. It's not rage or even grief. It's a hollow quiet, like standing in the ruins of something you built with your bare hands and realizing the person you built it with was never really there. I wasn't crying anymore. I wasn't yelling. I was just empty. A week later, I got an email from Isabel. "I didn't know about you. I'm sorry. I ended it the moment I found out he was married." She attached screenshots, proof that he'd lied to her too. He'd told her I was an ex who couldn't let go. He'd even shown her a photo of our daughter and said she was his niece. That was the final break, the last thread that kept any piece of me connected to the idea that he'd just made a mistake. This wasn't a mistake. This was who he was. I called him one last time. He answered. His voice was calm, like nothing had changed, like we were still two people sharing small talk over morning coffee. I asked him why. Why all of it? Why lie to me, to them, to himself? He said, because I couldn't choose. I didn't want to lose anyone. I laughed, not because it was funny, but because it was the most pathetic truth I'd ever heard. He didn't want to lose anyone, so he lost everything. I told him I was done. He said, "You're overreacting. Everyone has secrets." That line stuck with me. Everyone has secrets. Maybe that's true, but not everyone builds their entire life out of them. After I hung up, I packed every reminder of him into boxes. The hoodie, the photos, the wedding album. I didn't cry while doing it. It felt procedural, like cleaning up after a storm. I dropped the boxes off at a donation center. They didn't ask what was inside. I didn't tell them. That night, I sat outside again. Same porch, same silence. I thought about my grandmother's words from the trip. She looked at me across the kitchen table and said, "Sometimes men mistake desire for freedom, but freedom isn't taking, it's staying." At the time, I'd smiled politely, not realizing how perfectly those words described everything I was about to discover. I wish I could say that I hate him. It would be easier if I did. But what I feel now isn't hate, it's clarity. He never wanted honesty. He wanted justification. He wanted to confess just enough to feel clean, while keeping the rest buried. That's why he called it an open marriage. Not because he wanted openness, but because he wanted permission. People online tell me I should focus on healing, move on, take care of myself. I know they mean well, but healing feels like such a strange word. You can only heal from something that had an end, and I'm not sure this has one. Because even though he's gone, the echoes are still here. In every room, every memory, every habit of checking if the door's locked, as if he might walk back in. I'm in therapy now, working night shifts, raising my daughter, studying nursing. Sometimes I think about how much I've changed in just a few months. I used to think strength meant forgiving. Now I know strength sometimes means walking away without closure. Because closure is just another word for explanation, and explanations don't fix anything. The last time he reached out, it was months later. A short message, "I'm sorry for how things ended. I still care about you." I didn't reply. Because I finally understood that caring doesn't mean loving, and loving doesn't mean staying. He said he wanted an open marriage, but what he really wanted was open forgiveness, a revolving door where he could come and go without consequence. I shut that door, and for the first time in years, the silence feels like peace.